Hey, what's up, guys? It's Matt from RamseyVoice.com, and I wanted to talk about something very, very important. This is something that my students ask me all the time, and I could not overstate how important this is. As a singer, do you really need to learn how to read music? First, let me start off by saying that you do not have to technically be able to read sheet music in order to be a great singer. I work with great singers all the time that can't read sheet music at all. And in fact, there are tons of famous singers that never learned how to read sheet music. There's Elvis Presley, Jimi Hendrix, and even Eric Clapton has this amazing story about how he was super nervous because early on in his career, he got invited to be in a guitar session playing for Aretha Franklin. But Aretha had musical notation written for him to play, and he had no idea how to read it. However, there are tons and tons of great benefits to learning how to read music as a singer. Some of them you might already be able to guess, and some of them might really, really surprise you. But frankly, every single one of these reasons that you should learn how to read sheet music as a singer is crucially important and gives you a competitive advantage as a singer. And let's face it, in an industry that is so competitive like singing is, you want to get every single advantage that you can get. So these are 10 reasons that you should learn to read music as a singer. Reason number one, it will be so much easier to memorize new music. I mean, let's face it, vocal music is not particularly visual, It comes out of here, we hear it in our ears, or we hear it on a recording, but we don't actually usually see it represented visually. However, if you learn to read music, you're actually able to see the vocal music and the vocal melody represented visually, giving you one more way that you can lock it into your memory and into your voice. Reason number two, you're gonna know exactly what to expect from a vocal piece. With most pieces of music, you're gonna see right there, written in the musical notation, exactly where the lowest note and the highest note and where most of the notes tend to stay in the piece. And that's going to be crucially important to help you avoid any problem areas or any problem notes that happen to occur on a specific word or a note that might be difficult for you. This will also be super helpful in giving you an idea whether a piece might need to be lowered a couple of keys or even raised a couple of keys. If you have an idea about your vocal range and you can see the vocal range represented on the sheet music that you're looking at, then you're going to be able to tell whether it's too high or low. One of my favorite tips for singers too is to have them look forward in the sheet music to look for any problem notes. For instance, most men tend to break around the note E4, and most ladies tend to break around the note A4. So if you see a lot of notes in a piece of sheet music that hang out around those notes, you might know that there's some trouble spots ahead. Reason number three, it lets you express yourself musically. This is so important. Have you ever been in a situation where you've been around other people that are like, oh, he's just a singer, or he's just the vocalist or whatever, almost like alluding to you're not a real musician because you don't know how to communicate musically. Now, for most other instruments, learning to read music or understand a little bit of music theory or chords is usually central to learning how to play an instrument. However, learning to sing doesn't always require that. Now, there are certainly some techniques that will teach you to learn to read music as you're learning how to sing. However, it's much less common than a piano player learning to read music as they're learning how to play piano. It just doesn't happen as much. So if you learn how to read music, you're going to learn much better how to express yourself musically. Oh, hey, how about we go up a major sixth there? Or how about I do a little vocal trill where I sing in between two notes on a major step? You'll actually be able to communicate with the other members of a band better as a musician. One thing I always like to point out about this is as a vocalist, you are a musician. True, your instrument may be located inside of your throat, but you are still a musician and all of the rules of the music still apply to you. That leads us beautifully into reason number 4, which is that music theory is going to be so much easier to understand if you can read music. As I mentioned before, singing isn't very visual. It's, based a lot on feel and the way that things sound, but it's not very visual. But music itself is very, very visual. So how can you learn more about the patterns and the rules that tend to apply to music that make up music theory if you can't read it? It's going to be a lot tougher if you can't read music. Reason number 5 to learn how to read music as a singer, it will make your musical taste so much more diverse. Most of the time, if you're a pop or a rock singer, you're not going to be reading sheet music as you're singing. However, if you start to learn to read music, you'll probably find yourself drawn to lots of different kinds of music. Things that might have puzzled or thrown you before may all of a sudden start to make more sense and may actually draw you in, like gospel music or choral music. How do they get all those harmonies to work together? Well, if you can read music, then you can start to see how it's all put together. The same is true for musical theater and even classical music. Many of these are very, very based in the sheet music. That brings us to reason number 6 to learn how to read music. It may be required. If you're auditioning to get into a music school or even auditioning for a part in a play, oftentimes you'll be required to prepare a piece, and usually you'll be required to bring some sheet music with you. Well, if you don't know how to read sheet music, then you might be at a little bit of a disadvantage because it will be so much more difficult to select which cut or which part of the audition that you'd actually like to do and be able to communicate that to the accompanist. And further on down the line, if you do want to get into a music school, even more contemporary music schools usually have an audition process where they make you demonstrate that you are able to read music to some degree or another. They're looking for musically literate people rather than folks who have just been feeling it out. Number 7, this is a fun one. If you can learn to read music, then you can actually start writing your own melodies and, yes, even harmonies. Once you understand a little bit more about the way that music is put together, the way that harmony, melody, rhythm, all these things work together, then you're going to be able to actually start writing your own music and possibly arranging your own harmonies. Let's say that you're in a group and you have a great idea for a harmony that you want everybody to sing. Well, it can be very difficult to just kind of plunk out notes on a keyboard and make them sing it every single time. Instead, you could plot it out visually so that you're able to lock it into your memory and able to replicate it anytime that you want to. Reason number 8, you're not going to have to count on other composers to write your music for you. Now, I think that this is a really good point because even if we look at the Beatles early on, they couldn't read music. And, even if they didn't have a deep understanding of music theory, they had some idea about the way that music was put together, but they always relied on their producers like George Martin to actually arrange the harmonies and the vocals for them so that they could actually put it on the recording. And then later on down the line, when they were actually arranging strings and stuff like that for the recordings, they weren't able to do that themselves. They always depended on somebody else. This, of course, took them to the point until they struck out on their own and they were able to make their own arrangements as they got more and more familiar with music and music theory. Reason number 9, it opens up more opportunities to make money. If you want to make an income from your music, it pays, it pays to learn how to read sheet music. That's because many of the paying gigs, from choirs to jazz ensembles to even cover groups, will often use sheet music as a way of all rehearsing together so that everybody's on the same page. Several friends of mine that are professional session singers, that are called into a session, a few hours ahead of time. Oh, we need something for the new Disney soundtrack or something like that. They're not brought in and all of a sudden, it's just a bunch of people in a room together that are just practicing. No, they all have the sheet music sent to them. They're reading it. They're sight reading it first. Then they're practicing together so that everybody's on the same page. And those gigs really pay. And reason number 10 to learn how to read sheet music as a singer, it will make you feel more confident. I know that this is really a silly thing to say, but man, if you actually know what's on the page, you are going to feel so much more confident in your abilities as both a singer and as a musician. There's no two ways about it. An F that's written in the sheet music is an F. And if you sing an F, then you are correct, my friend. There's not going to be anybody that's going to be able to tell you that you're singing something wrong because it's written right there on the page. But I found in my own journey of learning to read music and sing over time that it really makes the whole process a lot more fun because you'll know exactly what you're supposed to be singing. So hopefully by now I've convinced you that it is very, very important and even a very profitable thing to be able to read music as a singer. Now, the next question, of course, is how do I actually start reading music. It's written on the page. What do I need to do? Do I need to get a piano? Do I need to find a music teacher or something like that? Those are all great opportunities. Now, for my singers, I typically recommend that they start training with the solfeggio system. And the solfa system is basically a way of ascribing an Italian sound or syllable to each note or each scale degree of whatever key that you're singing in. For instance, if you're in the key of C, we would start off with C being do, D being re, and going forward, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and do when I hit the C above that. I like to use the solfa system as just like a really easy way to get some kind of sight singing exercises, just to train your eye and your voice to start working together. And over time, you'll notice how much easier you're able to feel the relationships between each of the different notes. Now, unless you have perfect pitch, I recommend using the movable do system, whereas do is whatever the tonic or the root note of the key that you're singing in is. So even if I'm in the key of F, do is my first note, be do. And I know that's going to drive some people crazy, because for most people, they would think of that as fa if we're thinking in a fixed do system where C is always do, and anything above or below that would be a different syllable. Why don't we try one solfege exercise together? I've pulled this directly from my ancient copy of 90 Days to Sight Reading Success, and that just shows you how long people have been teaching this and how important it is. So starting from the lowest note of C and going up to the highest note of C, we're going to start off with do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and do again, right? Because we have our next C. So C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, which is our second do. Now, what's really cool about this music, I've found, is that even though it sounds kind of like made up and kind of like orchestrated, it can also be really fun to kind of start training your eye and your voice to work together. So let's just try this one really quickly together. I'll just show you how to do it. Remember, in order, we're going to go do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And if that's difficult for you at first, go ahead, pause, rewind, and rewatch this as many times as you need to, just to get a hold of those syllables. Again, that's do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and do. Now, if we would just read this first example together, where each quarter note is held for 1 beat and each half note is held for 2 beats, that would be something like this. 2, 3, 4. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, so, fa, mi, fa, so, fa, mi, re, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, so, fa, mi, re, do. So it's pretty simple, none of these intervals are very wide. I'm not going up by major thirds or perfect fifths or anything like that. Each note is right next to each other. Each one is just its own neighbor. Now that we've done one of those exercises and practiced on one, why don't you go ahead and try it on your own, and I'll just play the piano accompaniment in the background. Here we go. 2, 3, do. Good. Great job. Now, no matter where you are in your singing career, learning how to read music can have some very, very interesting benefits, both for your singing voice as well as your career. If you're looking to improve your own sight singing and ability to read music, I'd recommend checking out websites like musicnotes.com to go ahead and download whatever piece of music really inspires you. And I just want to encourage you, you don't even have to be able to read the music perfectly at first, but sometimes just being able to see the movement of the melody, the general shape of the notes can be so inspiring and so much fun for you. Now I want to hear from you guys. If you found this video helpful, make sure to smash that like button, comment with the next kind of video that you want to see me do, or maybe your favorite piece of music, and have you ever seen the sheet music for it? That would be interesting too. Make sure to hit subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.